ever considered that we are living in a unique time, that something world-changing is about to happen, and that it might concern you? If so, you're in the right place. Keep listening, and you'll hear thought-provoking views behind the news that point to a new and better future for all. Many people now sense that humanity is not alone. So consider this. If the Christ or the Buddha walked among us today as modern men, would we recognize them? What would they be saying? And most importantly, would we listen? Every Sunday on this program, Share International Radio will examine extraordinary events that are unfolding behind the headline news. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for. And now, welcome to this week's show.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to this week's show. This is Diana Gold-Holland speaking to you from beautiful British Columbia, Vancouver. And I'm very happy to be hosting again this week on Share on the Air Radio. Before we start, as ever, I'd like to give the premises for our show for any new listeners who are joining us for the first time today. A very special welcome to you as well. And basically, Share on the Air Radio and all the volunteers who help man the program and get it off to you have been following what are known as the ageless wisdom teachings, and particularly the teachings of Benjamin Creme, most of us for many years now. And the premises for the show are that, for one thing, we as humanity are not alone, and we never have been. We are, in fact, aided and abetted by a series of great teachers who are now emerging onto the world stage, who are literally beginning to walk among us, who are here to help us out of the intractable problems that we have, seemingly intractable problems that we have created for ourselves. They are here to guide, they are here to advise, and it is ours, of course, to implement their wisdom, their knowledge, as perfected masters, as people who have gone beyond all of the trials and tribulations that occur for regular folk who have completed their spiritual evolution on this planet and could, in fact, move on to other realms, other plans in the great scheme of cosmic evolution, but who elect to stay behind and to give a hand up to us, their younger sisters and brothers who are still learning, sometimes most painfully, our lessons. So these great teachers are here, they are here now, and they are here to help us. And at their head stands the Lord Maitreya. I'll spell that for you, M-A-I-T-R-E-Y-A. He is the master of all the masters. He is, in fact, the expected one of all the great religions. He is the Christ for the Christians, the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, the Messiah for the Jews, Krishna, etc., etc. And so he has come once again at the beginning of this new age, just as a new teacher comes for every age. And all of these people who I've named, and many others, including Hermes, Shankaracharya, people of the distant past, have stood forward to help guide us on our way. Now, this information, of course, is for your consideration only, but I do invite you to explore it further if it is new to you. And you can do that through the great body of wisdom that was bequeathed to us by Benjamin Creme, recently passed on. And you will find this information on the website www.share-international.org. That share is in sharing, SHARE-international.org. All of that said, thank you for listening, those of you who are longtime listeners, and thank you for all your wonderful comments and the support you give our show. Let's move right into talking with our guest today, Scott Champion, who's based in Los Angeles and who has 40 years' experience in investment finance and in economics. So Scott will be speaking us about finance and economics, but he is also a longtime student of the Ageless Wisdom teachings and the Benjamin Creme materials. That's Benjamin, C-R-E-M-E, as I neglected to say before. Scott has helped to found the Benjamin Creme Museum of Art in Los Angeles, which celebrated its first year of opening in this past October, and where you will find many of the works of Benjamin Creme, who was not only the spokesperson for the emergence of Maitreya and company onto the world scene, but also a great artist in his own right. So for the museum that Scott has helped to found, it's www.benjamincrememuseum.org. Now, let's get to the meat of it with Economics 101 and our guest, Scott Champion. Hi, Scott. How are you?
Hi, Diana. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. We're very, very much interested, of course, in the topics in finance and economics. It is all over the map today, and of course, one of the sorriest situations that we are looking at. Now, Maitreya, who is our great teacher for this age, advocates a 70-30% split between capitalism and socialism, the 30% being capitalism, the 70 being socialism, as the best possible economic system for the planet at this time. Can you tell us exactly what he means by that?
Sure. Maitreya's priorities center on the basic provisions, the basic necessities of life for everyone: housing, food, healthcare, and education. The only way to make certain that everyone on the planet has these as a universal right is through the development of a greater socialism, greater percentage of socialism in the global economy. Today, capitalism dominates the world. It even took over the former communist bloc of Russia and China. And today, the forces of greed and competition are pretty much running riot over the planet. And we've seen with the recent election in the United States, what I would call the forces of greed and competition reaching their zenith. And I don't know how long they can hold that position, but we will see. Benjamin Creme and Benjamin Creme's master and Maitreya have all said that there will be a world stock market crash, and it will bring that energy, that force to its knees, and the global economy to its knees. Socialism has at its heart a basic fairness that people have what they need to live. If the way the economic system is today, it would have us believe that making money and accumulation of money is the point of life. And the great spiritual teachers that you mentioned earlier, from Krishna to Buddha to Jesus to Muhammad to Shankaracharya to Hermes, none of them said that the purpose of life is to make more money, make more and more and more and more, and get richer and richer and richer. And that's what we have today. There's a tremendous emphasis for relatively few families and institutions. Maitreya has said about 2,000 families and institutions control about 85% of the world's wealth. And they don't seem to want to stop. There's not enough for them. And everything that goes on in the world economy seems to vacuum and suck up money up to the top, and it's left the people, the normal people in the world, with very little liquidity. There's not enough money floating around in the system at the basic level where we all live our lives. So many people are deeply in debt, and they don't have. Much of the world doesn't have food. Much of the world doesn't have clean water. They don't have sanitation. In the developed world, there's just tremendous drowning in debt, particularly in the West. And the life is being squeezed out of people. Commercialization is squeezing the life out of people. The planet wasn't created for us to produce, to be little producers and consumers. The planet was created so that we could show the beauty of our soul, so that we could be creative, so that we could serve others. But that's been hijacked with the capitalistic forces. And Karl Marx himself said that capitalism would consume itself. And I would posit to you that we're very close to that moment, that it has gone so far, and only through the cooperation of the world's central banks, beginning with the way Alan Greenspan bailed out the 1989 stock market or 87 stock market crash, and then the 2000 debacle in the U.S., what they call the the NASDAQ when it went crashing down, the technology stocks, and then we had the big collapse in this country in 2008 and 9, centered on real estate. And the response by the central banks was always to flood the system with money. They printed money, and of course this benefited the people who own stocks, because stock market, but after an initial drop it would shoot up because there's so much of this liquidity sloshing around in the system. And the people at the bottom are starved of this money, and the people at the top, the banks, the brokers, the people who can take advantage of it, the hedge funds, they take this money and they leverage it, and they buy financial assets. So you get this huge discrepancy in living standards in the world. You have relatively few people. It's not the 1%. It's a much, much tinier percentage. That's more like 1 in 1,000 that have tremendous sums of money, and they want more all the time. And it's like a blood flowing through a human body. There's just not a blood circulating in the global economy so that everyone can get their basic needs met. And this, I put it, not just the fault of capitalism, but the central bank actions of the past 20 years. They have one response, which is to flood the system with money, lower interest rates. And these things always benefit the holders of capital. If all that money had been put toward helping the poor and providing a basic income for people, the world would be much better off. It'd be much happier. It'd be much healthier. And instead, the money's gone up into this void that no one really understands. In 2008 or 2009, Maitreya himself gave a message through Benjamin Creme about that crisis, and he said basically that these trillions of dollars had been put into the system, but where did they go? No one really knows that. Where did the money go?
Yeah, indeed.
It was sucked up. It disappeared. It didn't go into the economy. The economy has struggled. The financial markets have done wonderfully. They're at all-time highs. But that's the result of poor policies. The policy should be done to take care of the people, and that's the true function of the government, according to the masters, according to Maitreya, is to take care of its citizens. Today, the citizens are exploited very much like the last few centuries, Africa and other continents. Everyone is exploited more or less in this system today. The standard of living has declined in the West. It goes down and down and down, and takes two families and working two workers in a family, and often working multiple jobs, and they keep losing ground to prices. They can't. The central banks' policies have pushed real estate prices, especially in the major cities, sky high. And that, of course, nobody can afford houses, so everybody rents, and that pushes rents in New York and London and Vancouver and Los Angeles and Paris and Seoul and Beijing, pushes them to the roof, and nobody can afford to live there either. So the policies always are having poor effects on the middle class and on the poor, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, that's quite a sober picture. When we come back, Scott, let's tell us what we can do about it. You're listening to Share on the Air Radio. Share on the Air Radio, thought-provoking views behind the news. Join us again on the other side of the break.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatesPR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
Want to help build the coming golden age? Want to experience the Aquarian energies of love, light, and power? Transmission meditation is a simple way for you and 2 or more friends to do just that and accelerate your own spiritual growth at the same time. Check out transmission meditation at shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org.
Hey everybody, Rachel Ray here. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face than cooking up a big meal for the whole family and lots of friends. But there's not enough room at my table for the 17 million kids in our country who struggle with hunger. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks collects surplus food to give hope to hungry kids. But they can't do it without your help. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. This is Diana Gold-Holland, your host today with Scott Champion, speaking to us about finance and economics and the very great issues that we are facing today. Scott, I want to move ahead a little bit in our discussion, and you've explained how the system is broken, that it's actually a fault of the system itself, of capitalism, and the counterpart of communism, which had its own collapse a little while ago. But you maintain that what is coming is a large financial collapse. Let's go into that and see where we go with that.
All right, let me add one thing.
First of all, how's it going to happen? Okay.
Well, let me add one thing to close out the previous section, because capitalism does have some positives. It's innovative, it's dynamic, it's flexible, it's evolutionary. If those energies were guided by social consciousness, which what the point of socialism coming in 70-30, they can be very advantageous to the economy. The old Soviet system didn't have any freedom, didn't have any flexibility. It got very rigid and it collapsed. So you're talking about now, how will this situation collapse? Well, the valuations today in the markets, is particularly, I'll speak mostly about the U.S., it's the largest market in the world, and they're essentially at all-time highs. The market is at an all-time high. Probably the only time the valuations were exceeded within the year 2000, 87, 1929. None of these have the valuations that we have today, the valuation metrics. So speculation has the low interest rates, the leverage that's available to people today. They can put up 1 or 2 pennies, 5 pennies, and bet $1. And this creates very high prices. It lets everything go very long way in one direction. The problem with leverage is it also works the same way in reverse. If and when this bubble pops, and I do believe it will pop, I do believe it will pop relatively soon. I don't know what will cause that pop. I don't know if there'll be computer failures in the banking system. I believe many years ago, Maitreya gave a series of predictions in International magazine, and one of the few that has yet to happen is that there would be computer failures in the banking system. And I do believe he means failures that where the backup tapes are wiped out as well, if that's what's going to happen. The old style stock market crash of going down for 10, 12, 15 months and the market shedding 50%, that's happened several times since Maitreya said we would have this collapse. So I'm expecting something much sharper. Maybe the markets freeze. You see this a lot on an intraday basis. The trading platforms freeze. They fail. They declare that they can take any orders. This is happening more and more and more. And I don't know if there's a limit to the cyber world with the banks and the trading systems, but I do notice that it's becoming more and more unstable. And nations have the ability to attack infrastructure, and they certainly could attack financial infrastructure. I don't know if anyone would purposely set something off that could take the whole system down, but I do wonder if that's one of the things that's coming. One way or the other, there will be a collapse in the markets, and it will lead to an economic collapse, a very, very severe economic collapse.
And do you think, for example, what if all the countries that the U.S. owes money to, or the main debtors like China, called in their loans? Would that trigger such a collapse?
Anything can trigger it. I don't the problem with China, they can turn in their bonds. They own they're the largest holder of U.S. bonds. They can turn them in, but the U.S. can just print the money and give it to them. The U.S. is in an advantageous position because they have the world's reserve currency. I believe not too far into the future, the U.S. dollar, the currency, will just be like any other currency. It won't have any special value. Anything could set it off. Any type of economic war, an economic war between China and the U.S. could easily set it off. If they went to sell their bonds on the open market, U.S. interest rates would skyrocket, stocks would collapse. I mean, this is a possibility. The U.S. could also choose to monetize those bonds, and they could send China, billion-dollar bills and say, here's your money. And then that money would flood back into the U.S. to buy everything up. So there's no good way out of this. The nations are heavily, Japan is even more indebted than the U.S. Europe, many countries in Europe are heavily indebted. China is heavily, heavily indebted, especially through their corporate government support of their corporations that they control. So there's a lot of accidents out there. I don't know which one will do it. I only know that Maitreya and Benjamin Crimm's master has said that we will have a financial and economic collapse. And Mr. Crimm also said these crashes tend to occur off the highs, and that's what we're at today. We're having a particular Trump euphoria, not only in the United States, but around the world and the global markets, as they believe that somehow this man can turn the global economy around, which is starved for money. And, nothing that I'm seeing in what he's proposing, it's just cosmetic, and no one's proposing anything for money to get back down into the level where we live, normal people live and operate their lives.
Right.
It's just more of the same. It's more competition, more greed. That's really all I'm seeing and hearing on the political side.
It's kind of a race to the bottom economically.
Well, yeah, getting the global economy to grow has been almost impossible. China claims to have 7% growth, but I know few economists that believe it. They think it might be more like 4%, but because everyone's lying about their statistics, there's probably no growth in the U.S., particularly if you were to take out defense spending or some of these things. Everyone's under pressure. Every corporation is trying to maximize their profits and their cash flow. They're cutting labor. They're cutting everything they can cut so they can add another penny to the quarterly earnings. And the short-term thinking of businesses is really crushing the world. And it's not good for jobs to be moved around the world to the lowest labor. Adam Smith, essentially, who founded capitalism, the basis for this thought, said that it would only work if people competing were at more or less the same socioeconomic level. And clearly that's not the case in the world today. There's vast discrepancies in labor standards in the world, the rates of labor pay, rates of labor safety. There are countries people make $1 a day. There's countries make $1 an hour. And this isn't fair when you're in a developed country and you built up these corporations, you built up the capital, and then next thing you know, they're moving to a country where they can cut the labor out cost by 90%. That leaves everyone here without a job and getting squeezed. And people going to college today, they're graduating, they're lucky to get a job in a bar or a restaurant, and they're going out with tremendous debts. The system is just, the commercialization of life is crushing everyone.
It's actually, Benjamin Crimm said that it's actually crushing the soul of humanity.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Maitreya himself said commercialization is more dangerous than an atomic bomb. And the forces of the commercialization, you have people today that have just taken over the United States that are denying climate change, and people who are very greedy, very competitive, fossil fuel energy focused, maybe even the next Secretary of State. And it's just crushing not just the people, but crushing the planet. It's just, the resources extracted out of the earth for profit, and going after the regulations. And it could be that the Paris climate accord is about to be invalidated by the United States. This would be a horrific occurrence if it occurs. So these forces make money. The capitalistic forces are just killing us.
Absolutely, and we are seeing these effects not only on the human family, but in all of our flora, our fauna, our water streams. All of this is being fed to this colossal greed and speculation, which is not profiting very many people. One thing that I always remembered from Maitreya's forecast that he gave between the years of 1988 and 1991, and which were carried in Share International magazine, one of the things he said was that the markets of the world are no more than gambling casinos, and that they would be done away with.
Right, and
kept around
today,
for the amusement of the few.
Yeah, and today there are much larger gambling casinos than they were in 87 to 91 because of the banks and the brokers have developed these derivatives which allow them to speculate on a level and in a field that no one ever dreamed possible. When they were first developed, people were locked up because they were called fraudulent instruments, but then the banks and brokers realized how much they could gamble with them. And it was one of the great causes of the 2007, 8, 9 economic and financial collapse was a derivative. They said there was over $1 quadrillion of derivatives outstanding. And I think this is where the money was vacuumed up by the people when the trillions of dollars the central banks went in to bail the system out. It really bailed out the people who won on these bets. And it allowed the losers to pay and the winners to walk away with the money. So I think a gambling casino these days is conservative. I think Las Vegas is conservative compared to what the banks and brokers and hedge funds are doing today because in Vegas, the odds are a few percent one way or the other. What these guys are, the leverage these people 20, 30, 40 to 1 are gambling with, it's unprecedented. It's never happened in human history, which also means when it blows up, the collapse should also be unprecedented.
Right, and so many people are calling for this. We'll be back again on Share on the Air Radio. We're here today with Scott Champion on finance and economics.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millisers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
Want to help humanity and the planet? Transmission meditation is a simple but powerful way for you and 2 or more friends to do just that and dramatically accelerate your own spiritual growth. You can read the book on transmission meditation free online. Visit shareontheairradio.org for details. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
My name is Dale Pazinski, and this is how I live United. I volunteer with United Way, helping the homeless in my community by teaching computer skills and helping them build a basic resume to save on their very own USB drive. It's huge when somebody says, "Hey man, that job that you helped me apply for, I got it." My name is Dale Pazinski. I help people achieve financial independence. So I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. This is Share on the Air Radio, your station for thought-provoking views behind the news here on OMTimes Radio. And I would like to move ahead again, Scott, and talk about what is likely to happen after the collapse and the emergence, truly, of Maitreya onto the world scene with his message of sharing.
Well, Right. Sharing is often misunderstood that we'll have to share our savings account, but what it really means is a very sophisticated global barter system where the nations take an inventory of what they produce and what they need, and through this barter system, the nations can come together and contribute what they have in excess, and they can draw down at what they need, and in this way, the needs of people for food, housing, healthcare, and education can be met. The masters have said that they're already, or Benjamin Krem has said that the masters are already at work on the blueprints for this new economy. I had a conversation with Mr. Krem a couple of years ago about this because everyone wants to know, well, what's it going to be like? What's it going to look like? And Mr. Krem told me that the masters say there's actually 9 different plans that would work. So since Maitreya and his group, the Masters of Wisdom, are not going to force anything on humanity, we have free will. Each nation will take these plans under advisement, and because they're going to experience Maitreya's love and his wisdom and his humility, they will follow the masters, and there are other masters who are in the world, and that they will externalize, and the people will see them, and they'll be able to talk to them, be able to question them. So these plans will be looked at and they'll be implemented. I personally think a country like the United States that is so capitalistic will be a little slow to get to 70-30, but I think countries in Europe will do it much more quickly. Scandinavia countries are already the closest to it. Maybe they're 40-45% capitalism, 50-55, somewhere in there already. So it'll be fairly easy for them. The countries, Japan and the U.S., who grown up on this capitalistic system, capitalistic idea, I think it's going to be difficult for them. I think they will accept it and they'll begin to implement it. I do think some of the business interests, the financial interests, the business people, the money people, they will resist it. I think the people power will eventually knock that resistance down pretty thoroughly. I think they'll be painful for a bit. There'll be pain when an economy collapses and a financial system collapses. It's painful, but Maitreya has said the pain will be short-lived. So we will get to the other side of it. And during that pain, I do believe we will have the Day of Declaration where people are able to see Maitreya and to hear his thoughts, how we go forward from here. And because of that day, I do think change will be relatively rapid. There will be a period of soul-searching, I have no doubt. And Ben Krem's master said people will walk on tiptoe for a time. And I think that's true. No one alive has ever had the experience that's coming where all eyes will see him and hear him and feel his love. So I expect change to be, probably from my point of view, painfully slow, but from a higher point of view, relatively rapid.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to take this idea a little further, but just let me explain for our new listeners that Maitreya, the great teacher whom Scott is talking about, comes not only himself this time, but with a group of teachers, all of them emerging onto the world scene, all of them masters of economics, finance, etc., and all of them here to help us. And one of those masters who is here, the Masters of Wisdom, was in contact, in 24/7 contact with Mr. Krem, and who gave him a huge body of information about the possibilities for the coming world, about the structures and the vision that we can adopt to make it a world where it is a world of dignity for all beings, where all people have the wherewithal to live, where all people have dignity in their work, and are more free to experience and develop their own soul quality, rather than being stuck in the drudgery that life is, for the misery that it is for so many people these days. So I would draw your attention to a trilogy of books by Mr. Krem called Maitreya's Mission. That's right, it is a magnificent 3-volume set that covers just a multitude of topics, anything you are interested in finding out the possibilities for is in those books. I invite you to just go on to the website, share-international.org, take a look at the book selection, take a look at some of the topics. You will be absolutely amazed. Open Maitreya's mission to any page and you will definitely continue reading. And many of the ideas that Scott and I are talking about today are fully explained in that work. So there's the background on the Masters being among us, and also where you can find more information on the process of emergence of these great teachers into the world, and before us culminating in what Scott has called the Day of Declaration. So from that day forward, it seems that there will be many great changes placed with the choice of saving our world. Maitreya, who already knows from his point of omniscience our answer, has said, "My heart knows your answer, your choice, and is glad." And he has actually proposed some of the changes that would be coming up in the future. Of course, one of the primary ones will affect the governments of the world, who do, in fact, still have a governing role, even though it is being challenged more and more by the multinationals. Scott, how will governments shift their priorities once this new reality is in place?
Well, the needs of their citizens will become paramount. This will be their focus. It's no longer the corruption of politics and the large corporations, the lobbyist systems. But this corruption will slowly go away, and the governments will realize that their real purpose, the reason they exist, is to take care of the lives of their citizens. So this will result in the food, housing, healthcare, and education becoming the central focus of governments, making sure that their citizens have this at a minimum. There's also in there the potential. It's not the goal of the Masters to make everyone the same and living the exact same level financially or economically. There'll be people who will still be relatively wealthy, but everyone will have what they need, and nice, not poor. So their aim is not to make everyone poor. But what will really begin is a huge, huge work of rehabilitation and really a recreation of life on this planet. The planet is ailing in the climate sense very much. Fossil fuels will be phased out relatively quickly. We will have new forms of energy that the Masters will introduce. But after the saving of the starving millions, the environment will become the number one priority of the world because it's in much worse shape than probably even the most rabid environmentalist believes. And today, the U.S. election, you see a peeling back of, or an emphasis in not sure that they believe climate science. I don't necessarily believe them when they say that, but that's the position they're taking. They're letting everybody know we're going for the money, and that's the only thing we really care about. But saving the environment will become, everyone will be involved in this. And Maitreya has made it clear that every single human being is important and can contribute something to the whole, that everyone is needed in this new work of reforming and rehabilitating life on this planet. And it actually will go relatively quickly. We're going to have great advisors. The Masters will advise in different, they're not all, that some will be advising in economics, politics. Every aspect of life is sacred to the Masters, not just the religious aspect. So teaching and social sciences and medicine and arts, everything matters to them. But we're here to be creative individuals, to let our souls show through and shine forth. And life today has been extinguishing that light, I'm sorry to say, for so many billions of people.
Yeah. Which country, Scott, do you think will be the first to have a true democratic participation by its citizens in the development of the economy, for example?
The Scandinavian countries, they're the closest. Probably Iceland, Finland, Sweden, Denmark. I think they're already the closest to it. It'll be the easiest for them. They don't have as far to travel. I think the U.S. and Japan have the furthest to travel. Europe's a little further along in this path. They might be 10, 15% socialism, but they have in their consciousness already a greater sense to take care of their people. China also has in their consciousness to take care of their people. They're a strange mix of ideas, but they are actually further ahead than the United States or some countries in Europe or Japan, with the idea that they're responsible for their citizens' welfare.
And so, for the states, for example, what is the drawback there? This spirit of independence that was the cornerstone of the states, or what's the impediment, considering all the wealth and all the first world status and comforts that are here?
The structures, the political, economic, social, religious, scientific structures, are all come from the age of Pisces. So the individuality and individualism is very powerful in there, and also the fanaticism and devotion to some particular ideal. The energies that will be waxing stronger and stronger, the energies of Aquarius, are the energies of unity and synthesis and brotherhood. So the everything really that exists, Maitreya has said, only the very best of the past will go forward. Everything else is really it's crystallized. Much of it needs to go. So I expect much of what we think of today that we could never do without, we will learn to do without, and it'll be replaced by new and more exciting things. I give you an example. You hear a lot about robots replacing fast food workers these days, and I think, oh, that's terrible. But there's a part of me knows that's going to be the future. They're going to replace all of this type of labor, so people are free to explore other aspects of their nature, some creative aspects. It might be music, it might be art, it might be business. I don't know. There's many things that could be explored. But while in the short term it looks like it's very destructive to labor, in the long term I think these things will free us. And these are the type of things that the old ways of the relationship between labor and capital, there are going to be new relationships that come in, and robots will do a lot of jobs that are done today by people, but people won't suffer because of it. They'll have everything they need. And they won't end up...
And how is that? They'll... Mm-hmm.
Through the sharing of resources.
It's viewed today through the sharing of resources, okay?
Right. Everyone as a universal right will have adequate food, housing, healthcare, and education. And because of that, there will be people who devote themselves to the arts or to music, or to serving others in some fashion or other. But there will be people who devote themselves to, they want to be businessmen, they'll be businessmen. There's people who want to be in sports, they'll be in sports. Everything will still be possible, but that the top, it'll be a squeeze. The top will come down. The people of money, they'll come down toward the bottom to some extent. The bottom's going to come up to a livable level. And so the trillions that are at the top that are in people's hands that aren't really benefiting anyone, that will be redistributed down so the people at the bottom can have a life.
So the people at the bottom can have a life. That
right.
is great. When we come back, I'm going to throw a few little loopholes at Scott and see how all of those work out. It's the Scott Champion on Finance and Economics. Share on the Air Radio. Back at you.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, Be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance. Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Share International magazine is unique in the world today. It draws connections that make sense between headline news and spiritual changes unfolding now on a global scale, and explains the forces driving those changes. It may be the message of hope you have been waiting for. Investigate for yourself at shareontheairradio.org. That's shareontheairradio.org. shareontheairradio.org.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to, are you? Kids, work, listening to the radio. You're busy, which is great because busy people can't get prediabetes. Oh my, I read that wrong. They can. Should have worn my glasses. So visit doihaveprediabetes.org and take a short test, because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Welcome back to Share on the Air Radio. Visit us on Facebook for more information and lots of sources of material. That's Share on the Air Radio North America on Facebook, or on our website, www.shareontheairradio.org. Now, in line with Maitreya's priorities, the basics of which are adequate food, shelter, education, and health care for every single person on the globe, which is so adequately described, Scott, in terms of, how people could live once freed of these things through, among other things, the robots taking over much of the drudgery work in the world. With those priorities fulfilled, that will be essentially a completely different world. But to begin with, I want to throw just a few issues at you and see how this all works out. For example, how can a market crash resolve the ruthlessness of the global markets today?
Well, I believe I would not be the least surprised if what's coming is a loss of the digital wealth. Anything that's real, a building, a car, a land, a factory, timber, agricultural land, water, iron ore, copper, these things are still there. Nothing is really lost. The wealth today it's sort of a dream. It's a digital. People have $70 billion, or they have $150 billion, or this corporation's worth $1 trillion. But fundamentally, it's just digits on a computer. And I think I would not be the least bit surprised that it sort of gets wiped away somehow or other. And so nothing that's real will be removed. The food is still here, the sun or energy, the waters, the ocean, the plant life, the agriculture, timber, mining, all those things are still there. So I think money
yeah,
today
and of course
became
we're seeing.
Yeah, I don't think it's that difficult for a country like the United States or European countries or Japan, China. But think about what happened in Greece. Everything sort of froze, and people could only get a little bit of money out of the ATM machine. I don't think it's that difficult for the governments of the world to print up enough currency and get it out into the system. It would take a few months, sure, so that there'd be enough money, real currency money, what we accept as money, to go around the system so we could eat and pay our bills. I don't know what will happen with housing. Maybe payments will be suspended. Maybe rents will be suspended. But it'll be, in the end, it'll be fair. I'm sure it'll be fair to everyone. But it doesn't, the problem is that the money is all digital and it's not in the people's hands. And I think that government, people can't be put on, you can't put 300 million people on the street, so it's not going to happen. So the government has to liquefy the economy at the basic level where people are living. And I think there might be a suspension of certain contracts, real estate contracts, general contracts for a time until everything is sorted out. But people have to eat, they have to have a place to sleep, and they need health care. So I think what I expect is a loss of the digits, the digital wealth. That's what I really expect.
Okay.
And the reason is all that's digits come from this massive speculation, the global casino. So many banks and hedge funds and brokers are betting. They're betting a dollar with a penny behind it. And it creates this enormous, quote, wealth that it can just be like a soap bubble that pops in the air. It can all come crashing down.
And then while we're at it, can we do things like forgive the enormous debt of the third world, for example, which is crushing them daily?
Right. I expect most of the third world debt will be written off. I think in the United States, it might shock people around the world to know, but student debt today is higher than credit card debt. I mean, and that's just happened in the last 10 years. They threw loans at students. They got them taking $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 in loans to go to college, but the jobs to pay them back are not there. So they're lucky to get a $10 or $12 an hour job, minimum wage type job, and they can't make their student loan payments. So they're doing it with autos, and I don't know if they're doing it in Europe or other places, but they're doing it with autos for the past 3 years in the U.S. They're doing just like they did in real estate. They just changed the game. It was real estate in 7, 8. The last 2 or 3 years, it's autos and student loans. These money makers, they just push it and push it and push it, and the bubble is inflating, and when it pops, it will not be pretty. I don't think the central banks will be able to come to the rescue of this one. I think it's too late. The 2007, 8, 9 crisis was the last time that their shenanigans will work.
Scott, we're running out of time very shortly, so tell us, what can we, the little people, do now heading into this?
Pray. I don't get into investment advice. I don't like it. I do think it's wise. Mr. Krim is advocating, have a little small amount of money around, a little bit of your local currency for, maybe you could a few months to live on, have, maybe in a bank or safety deposit, savings account. Maybe you have a little bit at home. Just don't go crazy with it. I personally believe the question is how do they reliquify the system later and come up with a currency that the people will have faith in. I don't think that after this, I don't necessarily believe the dollar will be the world's reserve currency. I don't think China wants that. Russia wants it. I think most countries would like to see that go. But currency has to be linked to something. I suspect since the U.S. and Russia and China and a few European countries have substantial gold reserves, we won't go back to a gold standard, but we might go back to a plan where some major nations tie their level of liquidity to something like gold. I mean, they could tie it to other things, but they'll tie it to something
and what
real.
About, Scott, what about people power? Can we begin to change the institutions? The Occupy movement, the Arab Spring, do any of these count?
Well, that's one of the things that disappoints me. The people power is there, and perhaps they've done what they were expected to do. They demonstrated. They said it's no good. But as long as the people, the 2,000 families and institutions continue to control all the wealth, I don't see that having any great long-term effect. When they no longer have the wealth, then I think the people power will take over, and they'll make certain that we don't put the system back together for those 2,000 families and institutions. That's where I think the people power is really important. After the collapse, after the Day of Declaration, the people stand up and say, no more of the greedy, competitive ways. We want to live in unity. We want to cooperate. We want everyone to have what they need to live a normal life. That's when I think people power will really, really begin to exhibit the type of energy that will persevere and go on and on and on.
And of course, I would add that for that, Maitreya stands as the catalyst, because knowing that these kinds of energies are the wind in our sails, we can rally round these great teachers and their much wiser ideas of how we should be proceeding. It will give us a focus to
I believe that day we will know on that day, the Day of Declaration, why we're here, why we exist, what the plan is. So I don't think we're going to be able to, the forces that control the world today, I don't believe they'll be able to hang on for very long. I'm sure they'll try, but people are going to be inspired, and I'm sure some people will be afraid, but more or less, you're going to have 2 billion people that Mr. Krem's master said are already ready, and there's probably a couple billion sitting on the fence, and that's going to be an enormous group of people, 4 or 5 billion people in the world, demanding change, demanding, yes, this is what we want. We want something new. We want something fair. We want our children to have food. We want our children to be educated. We want to always know we have health care. We have a roof over our head. That's all most people want.
And of course,
they've made it very difficult today.
And of course, there are so many young people in the world today who are ready to be at the helm, who come in with the energies of the Aquarian age, who are already imbued with the ideas of brotherhood and oneness and synthesis. These people will be able to take the helm and lead
Absolutely.
us into these new structures.
Yeah, all of us that are talking about it they'll probably have our shoe prints on our backs as the young people walk all over us and get us out of their way. Because someone has
will
to
be
implement.
dragging.
Right.
Yes,
someone has to implement. Yeah. Someone has to implement.
And at the same
ideas.
time, as Benjamin Krem says, the leaders of the world will be dragged, kicking and screaming into the new age.
I have no doubt.
So once again, thank you, Scott, for being with us, and to all our listeners.
Thank you, Diane. It was a pleasure.
For more information for all our listeners, www.share-international.org. See you next week for the unraveling of the mystery of dark energy with guest Eliza Graff. Bye for now.